Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Recha Akodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Jeremiah, the 27th chapter, in which the Lord has Jeremiah construct yokes, and bonds as a symbol, to represent the nations that Nebuchadnezzar would take over, and basically like a message onto them, right, to warn them to be subservient onto the Babylonians, or else they would suffer judgment really from the Lord. So this is Jeremiah chapter 27, verse 1. In the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, came this word onto Jeremiah from the Lord Yahweh, saying. Now, in Jeremiah 27 and 1, there's an error here, which I believe might be even from the Hebrew text, but this Jehoiakim should really be Zedekiah. Okay, this should be during the reign of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. So, most even commentaries also point that out, because as we continue to read the chapter, you'll see why it doesn't make sense for this to have been Jehoiakim. In fact, it had to have been an error. So verse 2, the Lord tells Jeremiah, "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh to me, make thee bonds and yokes, and put them upon thy neck." Now, let me see, bonds and yokes, Bible. Give a little visual if we can find a good one. Okay, this is an example here. I think they're probably pulling this from Jeremiah. Yeah. But a yoke and a bond, something like this, is what was put upon usually like cattle, and then you would put this over their neck, right? And then they would be yoked together. And by them being yoked together, you could then have them drive the plow, right, that the plowman would be using to break up the earth. So when you zoom in here, this is an example. So I believe these might be the bonds, and then this would be like the yoke that is like that bar that connects them. So, and usually it would be made of wood. Sometimes, because a wooden yoke can still be broken right after wear and tear. But as we see here, there are also yokes of iron, if needed, that the Lord mentions. So the Lord tells Jeremiah, make these bonds and yokes, right, and put them on your neck, and send them to the king of Edom, and to the king of Moab, and to the king of the Ammonites, and to the king of Tyrus, and to the king of Zidon, by the hand of the messengers which come onto Jerusalem, onto Zedekiah, king of Judah. See, so first point of why it doesn't make sense for verse 1 to be Jehoiakim, because how is Zedekiah going to be the king of Judah at the same time that Jehoiakim is reigning? Because when you just read the history, they reigned at different times, right? So basically the Lord is saying like this yoke and bond is going to be like a symbol. It's symbolic, but send these to the messengers, right? The ones that come to Zedekiah, so that they can take it back to their different nations and tell them, right, and command them to say unto their masters, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, thus shall ye say unto your masters. So just as, remember, the Lord told Jeremiah that he would be a prophet unto the nations, right? So basically tell them, right, this is what the Lord says. I have made the earth, the man and the beasts that are upon the ground, by my great power and by my outstretched arm, and have given it unto whom it seemeth meet unto me. So whoever the Lord decides, he would give dominion of the earth to them. That's what he means by this. And now I have given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, right? Because the Lord raised them up for a purpose. And really, whatever Nebuchadnezzar did, the Lord put in his mind to do. whether he was aware of it or not. That's why him, just like everybody else, is really a servant of the Lord. So the Lord raised up the Babylonians, right, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. And I keep saying that because there's a difference, right? The the rulers at the time of the Neo-Babylonian Empire were Assyrians. Okay, so just so that you don't get confused when you hear Babylonians. But in any case, he raised them up. He set up Nebuchadnezzar. It says here, and the beast of the field have I given him also to serve him. So basically, he had complete dominion over the regions and the territories which the Lord had made subject unto him. And all nations shall serve him, and his son, and his son's son, until the very time of his land come. Right. So you're going to be subject unto them until their time is up. The time for them to rule is at an end. And then many nations and great kings shall serve themselves of him, right? Meaning once their time is up, they're going to now be ruled over, or they're going to say have their kingdom taken over, as it says, by many nations and great kings. So if you look at that region, really, when you look at the empire, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, when you look at what happened when the Persians took over, the Persians basically took over that dominion, that reign, that territory, and then expanded it. And then similarly with the Greeks, and similarly with the Romans to a degree, right? Verse 8, and it shall come to pass that the nation and kingdom which will not serve the same Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and that will not put their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon. So if you refuse to submit onto the king of Babylon, right, to be a tribute and to basically try to rebel against him. And remember, this is the message that the Lord told Jeremiah to tell the messengers to tell their masters. So if you don't submit onto the king of Babylon, that nation will I punish, saith the Lord Yahweh, with the sword and with the famine and with the pestilence, until I have consumed them by his hand. Meaning, what would happen is the Lord would punish them by having the Babylonians come against them, besiege them in most cases, or invade their land. And well, in the case of like a siege, these things would be prevalent, right? Typically there would be a famine because they would run out of food within the siege. They would die, and if they didn't burn the bodies or bury it properly, then it would start to breed, diseases and so on. Okay. And then on the outside would be the armies, which would have the sword, right, of the Babylonians. And then eventually they would break in. And so it would be a devastating kind of attack or judgment or invasion that the Lord would use the Babylonians to bring upon that nation. And he's saying this because he would give the Babylonians, or the king of Babylon, the upper hand against them. So the Lord is saying, look, according to my prophetic timeline, Babylon has to reign, right? The Neo-Babylonian Empire has to reign, and they're going to do it regardless. Now, you can escape grave judgment by just submitting yourself onto them, or you can try to fight against them, and then you're still going to be subject onto them, but you're going to suffer these things as well. Verse 9, therefore hearken not ye to your prophets, nor to your diviners, nor to your dreamers, nor to your enchanters, nor to your sorcerers, which speak unto you, saying, and these would be classified as like the wise men of these particular nations, because they would use usually left-handed practices, right? If they weren't a prophet of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai, to gain insight or foresight into certain things that they could then, tell their people. Some using deceptive practices, and some actually using left-hand practices to perform, certain low-level miracles to a degree, right? In terms of insight into certain information that they can provide their masters. So Jeremiah says, don't listen to them, right? Which speak unto you, saying, ye shall not serve the king of Babylon, right? So you're not going to have to be subject unto them. For they prophesy a lie unto you, to remove you far from your land, and that I should drive you out, and ye should perish. Because what would happen after you rebel, thinking that you won't have to serve them? They would get the upper hand, they would take over, and they would carry you captive to their land, and you would serve as slaves over there, as opposed to just basically coming to some terms and agreements and then just being you can still live in your land, but you would just be subject onto them. But the nations that bring their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon and serve him, those will I let remain still in their own land. See, just as I said, saith the Lord Yahweh, and they shall till it and dwell therein. Right? When you till the land, you basically live off the land, right? You plant, you sow, you reap, you harvest X, Y, and Z. So this is what Jeremiah said to the messengers. I spake also to Zedekiah, king of Judah, according to all these words, saying, bring your necks under the yoke of the king of Babylon, and serve him and his people and live. Now, Zedekiah was already a puppet ruler, as in he was set up by Nebuchadnezzar, like put in that place to reign over them, but to be subject onto the Babylonians, right? So they were already under the dominion of Babylon. However, what Jeremiah was saying here is, I know like what your intentions are, right? In terms of trying to rebel, but just keep bring your neck, subject yourself under them, and you'll be fine, right? And you won't have to suffer the judgments that I just mentioned upon you and upon these people, right? As he says, why will ye die, thou and thy people, by the sword and by the famine and by the pestilence, as the Lord Yahweh hath spoken against the nation that will not serve the king of Babylon? Because by refusing to do that, you would be technically going against the will of the Lord, or the word of the Lord, and then you would suffer that judgment. Therefore hearken not unto the words of the prophets that speak unto you, saying, ye shall not serve the king of Babylon, for they prophesy a lie unto you. Right? And this is Jeremiah was referring to the false prophets that were in Jerusalem or in the territories of Judah that were basically telling them, nah, don't worry about it. You're not going to have to be subject onto the king of Babylon. We are God's chosen people. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's going to deliver us from them. So don't worry about it. Jeremiah says that's a lie, because this is the Most High's intention. For I have not sent them, saith the Lord Yahweh, yet they prophesy a lie in my name. See, so they'll come and they'll say, as we're actually about to see, I think in the next chapter, they'll say, thus saith the Lord, right? Or basically, in the name of the Lord, right? X, Y, and Z. And that's when the Lord said they prophesy a lie in his name. He meant that literally, like, they would actually say, like, in the name of the Lord, or the Lord came on to me and said this, that, and the third. But in actuality, that wasn't the case. So he's saying here to Zedekiah through Jeremiah, don't listen to them, because they're prophesying a lie to you. And what that would do, right, that I might drive you out, so you would be carried away captive out of your land, and that ye might perish, ye and the prophets that prophesy unto you. So this would be the outcome that would happen to you if you take heed unto their lying words. Also I spake to the priests and to all this people, saying, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, hearken not to the words of your prophets that prophesy unto you, saying, behold, the vessels of the Lord Yahweh's house shall now shortly be brought again from Babylon, for they prophesy a lie unto you. So remember that prior to this point, when the Babylonians came to Jerusalem, right before, they took some of the chosen, right, the royal line, I should say, but they also took vessels, right? They took gold, they took silver, because the temple of the Lord was filled with these things. So you had certain men that were prophesying or telling and deceiving the people, saying, oh, don't worry about it. The Lord is going to break you free from them. In fact, all those vessels that they took, they're gonna bring it back in no time. It's going to be brought back here. And Jeremiah was saying, no, that's not the case. All right. Verse 17, hearken not unto them, serve the king of Babylon and live. Wherefore should this city be laid waste? Right? So why should you suffer this city to be destroyed through disobedience if you can just serve the king of Babylon and you'll be good? Verse 18, but if they be prophets, and if the word of the Lord Yahweh be with them, let them now make intercession to the Lord of hosts, that the vessels which are left in the house of the Lord, and in the house of the king of Judah, and at Jerusalem, go not to Babylon. So if these men truly be prophets, then why not have them instead beg the Lord so that the remaining vessels that are here don't get carried away to Babylon as well? For thus saith the Lord of hosts concerning the pillars, and concerning the sea, and concerning the basis, and concerning the residue of the vessels that remain in the city. Now, the pillars and the sea and the basis, these are the things that were in the temple. Remember when Solomon built the temple, the sea is not the ocean. The sea is talking about that huge laver, which was like a body of water that upon it was the or under it was like the golden calves, not the idolatrous ones. But let me pull this up here. Solomon's temple. Yeah, here we go. This is a good visual. And also this is a good one too. So maybe we'll look at both. But this right here, this is what it means by the sea. Okay, which is it was a very huge like basin of water, and it had, I believe, what was it, four or three, a certain amount of bulls or oxen made of gold on each side that this rested upon. And then you had the smaller ones right here and there, and then you had the actual like pillars and sort of foundations that held up the temple. A lot of these were made of gold or overlaid in gold and were valuable, right? So that's what Jeremiah is referring to here, saying that this is what the Lord said concerning these things that remain: the bases, the residue of the vessels, the pillars, the sea, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, took not. So the things that he left when he was taking all the gold and the vessels, the precious stuff out of the temple and so on, when he carried away captive Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim. So once again, this goes to show you, right, that verse 1 was an error. It should be Zedekiah, because at this point, Jeremiah is recounting something historical when he mentions verse 20, right? And he mentions when Jeconiah was taken captive to to Babylon. That was after Jehoiakim's reign, right? So it doesn't make sense for verse 1 to be in the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim that all these things are happening. King of Judah from Jerusalem to Babylon, and all the nobles of Judah and Jerusalem. Yea, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, concerning the vessels that remain in the house of the Lord Yahweh, and in the house of the king of Judah and of Jerusalem. So the vessels that are left, they shall be carried to Babylon, and there shall they be until the day that I visit them. So until the time when the Lord decides, okay, now I'm going to have mercy and I'm going to return the vessels and have the temple rebuilt and return the people back to the land. But until then, those vessels are going to stay in Babylon, saith the Lord Yahweh. Then will I bring them up and restore them to this place. That's when I'm going to bring them back to this place, not in the time that these false prophets are telling you. And that brings us to the end of Jeremiah, the 27th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.